In the coming days, Senate Republicans are going to face a choice. Will they take their cues from the White House, as Leader McConnell clearly stated, and engage in a cover-up for President Trump? Or will they, in this most sacred of undertakings prescribed by the Constitution?
This is not a sacred undertaking. This is a disgusting spectacle. They have destroyed a sacred document and a provision within that document. He's taken both sides of the same issue. He's a complete slimeball chameleon. So to listen to this guy preach now about this is really, truly disgusting.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, LevinTV.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is LevinTV. Well, the media are all excited. Have you noticed? They're going to get their ratings up and their hits, and everybody's got new haircuts and new clothes. It's just so cool. This is their Super Bowl. They're having a Senate impeachment trial, something they've been pushing for since Donald Trump announced he was going to run for president of the United States. Finally, they got what they wanted. The House impeached the president of the United States because the Democrats have a small majority, and as soon as they took it over, they ran for the finish line. And the due process they used was non-existent. And we're not going to go through all that again, but what a disgusting spectacle. Now it's in the Senate, and the Senate demands witnesses. Oh, and new evidence. The same people who refused to allow other evidence, and the Republicans, the president, to call witnesses in the House, among many other actions that were totalitarian, the same ones, Adam Schiff and Nadler, are demanding due process. We need to be able to call witnesses, and we need to be able to bring in documents. So they want to take the spectacle that took place in the House, the totalitarian clown show, and leach it into the Senate, where they want to destroy that institution, having destroyed their own. They seem to think they and Nancy Pelosi control the Senate. I certainly hope that's not the case, but that's their effort. And I'm glad that Adam Schiff is the lead among the prosecutors in the House, because he's a reprobate, and he's despised by the vast majority of Americans. That is, Americans, if they even know who he is. You saw that Jeopardy clip. I won't play it. You played it enough, where three really smart people in Jeopardy were shown Adam Schiff, and they couldn't identify him. Well, that's a good thing. So you could see the media this weekend. You saw Chuck Todd, a disgrace, George Stephanopoulos, a disgrace, and all the other no-names, trashing Republican senators and other Republicans coming on their program, just attacking them and brutalizing them the way they would never attack a Democrat senator and never have question a Democrat senator. Then they wonder why, oh my goodness, why do they hate us? Why do they think we're biased? We're not the enemy of the people. Oh my God, we're the ones protecting freedom of the press and the First Amendment. No, they're the ones destroying it. Now, Alan Dershowitz has been out there, to his great credit. He's been explaining the Constitution, how this impeachment is unconstitutional, and even if everything the Democrats have concocted in the House were true, it would still be unconstitutional. So he's come under attack by lightweights like Lawrence Tribe, a former colleague of his at Harvard, and others saying, well, Dershowitz doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Then he's under attack by this website called Mediaite, which was founded by Dan Abrams, who's the legal analyst over at ABC News, because he's a hack too. And they're CNN's getting old clips from when Dershowitz was about 12 years old, where he said these sorts of things are impeachable, twisting and spinning, as CNN does. Everyone knows it's not a news operation anymore. But this is the foundation that the media are laying out there to try and puff up the Democrat case, which is a non-case. So here's Dershowitz yesterday on This Week with Democrat hack, former Clintonoid, that would be George Stephanopoulos. Let's check it out. Go.
Is it your position that President Trump should not be impeached, even if all the evidence and arguments laid out by the House are accepted as fact?
That's right. When you have somebody who, for example, is indicted for a crime, let's assume you have a lot of evidence, but the grand jury simply indicts for something that's not a crime, and that's what happened here. You have a lot of evidence, disputed evidence, could go both ways, but the vote was to impeach on abuse of power, which is not within the constitutional criteria for impeachment, and obstruction of Congress. Those are both the kinds of things that led Hamilton and Madison, talk about nightmare, to regard that as the greatest nightmare. Number one, giving Congress too much power to allow the president to serve at the will of Congress. And number two, as Hamilton put it, the greatest danger is turning impeachment into a question of who has the most votes in which house.
Yes, and when George Mason, a tremendous founder, used that word maladministration on the floor of the Pennsylvania Assembly House, which was where the Constitutional Convention was held in Philadelphia. Maladministration was rejected. James Madison stood up and said, you cannot have a low bar like that, then the President of the United States will be a servant of Congress, the House and the Senate, and he will not be independent. Remember, they created 3 co-equal branches. If you take the time to read the history and Madison's notes, and it can be a little difficult, but if you do, they're out there. Madison took the most comprehensive notes at the Constitutional Convention. And 50 years after he passed away, they were released at his request. When you read them, you'll see what was discussed about impeachment. They were debating whether impeachment should even take place because of something like this. How are you going to have an independent president if he can be impeached by the Congress? So they took their bicameral Congress that they created. Remember, it was just an image then. They didn't actually have it in place. And they separated the authority when it came to impeachment. Impeachment in the House, simple majority. Then the fear was you'll have a runaway rogue House like we do now, where one party will just seek to remove another. And then you'll have the Senate, which back then the members were chosen by the legislatures of the states. That was changed with the 17th Amendment. I think it should be repealed, but I guess I'm alone in that. But it is what it is. So you elect your senators, but still the Senate is the brake on a rogue, runaway, mob-driven House of Representatives and a temporary faction and small majority like they have now. That's why when you see the House managers, I guess they call them, going to the Senate, making all these demands, the Senate should reject them because the senators are there to reject the rogue, mobster-like, faction-like activity that these committee chairmen in particular, Adam Schiff and Nadler, instituted against the President of the United States. So their demands should fall on deaf ears for the most part, and hopefully they will. Time will tell. But he's exactly right. Abuse of power. I've been through this enough. Every single president in American history could have been impeached for abuse of power. Because who determines if they abused power? Well, if you have an opposition party controlling the House of Representatives, and they disagree with you on policy, and they make these over-the-top, in some cases, extreme and outrageous demands for documents and witnesses and participation in executive branch activity, and you say no, or you decide to go to court, then they can say, okay, abuse of power, abuse of power. And by the way, we make a demand for information. We have a 100% right to that information. Therefore, it's obstruction of us, Congress. So there's our 2 counts. No, that's exactly the opposite of what the framers intended in Philadelphia. Impeachment wasn't supposed to be easy, and they spent a lot of time debating the terms of impeachment. So I reject that. Part of the problem we have now are these legal analysts and other people who come on who pretend to be experts on the impeachment clause in the Constitution. Many of them spent their careers as federal prosecutors. Many have spent their careers as defense counsel or whatever they are. They're not experts in this area. They're not scholars in this area. They're trying to catch up and read, but they project their own courtroom experience or their own wishful analysis onto what's taking place in this country. Some say, you know, if you start to debate the facts, if the facts come into question, then you'll be able to call witnesses and provide more evidence. No, not so. Why? This isn't a federal courtroom. This isn't a criminal case. No. The senators can sit there and say, we don't need any more information. And then on the other hand, they say this is a purely political process, which it's not. It's supposed to be a constitutional process. It's motivated by politics, no question about it. But the process is constitutional. There are terms in the Constitution. There are requirements in the Constitution. And you're supposed to try to faithfully follow them. And then on the other hand, they said you're supposed to be impartial. To hear Chuck Schumer and other Democrats go on and on about the Senate must sit as an impartial jury that the Republicans are making statements and making decisions that show they're not impartial. To hear Chuck Schumer and the other Democrats talk like this, you have to be insane to not laugh a gut out. I mean, it's unbelievable, their comments. So no, they're not going to be impartial in that sense. And by the way, again, if you read Madison's notes, they rejected the idea that judiciary should have any role in this other than the Chief Justice sitting in a ministerial role. Chief Justice doesn't really run a courtroom. The majority in the Senate runs the room. The Senate shall have the sole power. The Senate shall have the sole power. The Chief Justice is there as a traffic cop, pretty much the way Rehnquist was during the Clinton impeachment. And if John Roberts goes much beyond that, rather than deferring to the majority, then John Roberts will be violating the Constitution too. You didn't hear that from any former federal prosecutor commenting, did you? Or any defense counsel commenting. That's the way it's supposed to work. So now Schumer says, we're going to force votes. We're going to force votes on witnesses and documents. We're going to make the senators, because there's 4 senators in particular that we're focused on. Let me tell you what they're really focused on. These senators who are running for re-election in this cycle, who are in purple states or even blue states, or are weak in their states. They're focused on Collins, who has a tough race. They're focused on Gardner, who has a tough race in Colorado, and others. And so the reason Schumer's going to have vote after vote after vote is to create political ads, television ads for their opponents. The House process was used with your tax dollars. They hijacked the House of Representatives, the Democrats, to create political ads, campaign issues they think will help them, and so forth. That's outrageous. Now the Senate, under Schumer's doing exactly the same thing. They're not calling witnesses because they think they'll get them. They might. They might, depending on how weak some of these weak link Republicans are in the chain. But they're calling them mostly to create fodder for the election cycle in 2020. The president and vice president are up, a third of the Senate's up, all the House is up. That's what they're doing. That's what this is about. How many times have you heard a legal analyst on any of the networks mention that? Never. Never, because they just parrot and try to reinforce what the Democrats say. Here's Schumer yesterday. Let's check it out. Go.
In the coming days, Senate Republicans are going to face a choice. Will they take their cues from the White House, as Leader McConnell clearly stated, and engage in a cover-up for President Trump? Or will they, in this most sacred of undertakings prescribed by the Constitution?
This is not a sacred undertaking. This is a disgusting spectacle. They have destroyed a sacred document and a provision within that document. He's taken both sides of the same issue. He's a complete slimeball chameleon, is Schumer. When he defended Clinton, both in the House and then he got elected to the Senate, he was actually part of the impeachment and part of the trial in the same case involving Clinton. And he defended Clinton as aggressively as he could. He helped coordinate with the White House. He opposed witnesses and on and on and on. So to listen to this guy preach now about this is really, truly disgusting. Go.
Constitution. Vote for a fair trial with witnesses and documents that allow all the facts to come out. The charges are serious. Let's make no mistake about it.
No, they're not serious. They are concocted. And there's now a standard in the House of Representatives that is so low that one day his party and whoever his president is going to suffer as a result, and they will take the opposite position. The reason Dershowitz is arguing what he's arguing, and I've been arguing what I've been arguing, is purely based on constitutional grounds. And that, yes, I support Trump, but my arguments in defense of Trump are in defense of the Constitution and the proper use of the impeachment clause. The standard is so low now. And you saw how they won a fishing expedition after fishing expedition, hoping they could impeach the president on Russia, hoping they could impeach the president on obstruction, hoping they could impeach the president on campaign finance laws, and on and on and on. Then at the last minute, they cling to this absurdity involving Ukraine. That is not serious. That is not sacred. That is tyranny. Go.
If a president can interfere and if a president can get a foreign power to interfere in our elections.
The president did not get a foreign power to interfere in our elections, and he did not ask a foreign power to interfere in our elections. The president asked them to look at the extent to which Ukraine was interfering in our election in 2016, which it did, according to Politico, the New York Times, and a court in the Ukraine, among others. And the president said, why don't you look into what the Bidens did too, given all the reports that were available on them, and you might want to work with the Attorney General of the United States. That's it. He didn't say interfere in our election. Look, the Biden family is corrupt. There's an article out today, maybe we'll talk about it in the next day or two, about 5 family members who've made a lot of money off Biden's name. What part of this is about, folks, is to try and immunize Biden, should he be the nominee of the Democrat Party, him and his family members from criticism about how they've used the Biden name and his government contacts to make a fortune. 5 of them. Believe it or not, a New York Post article, how 5 members of Joe Biden's family got rich through his connections. Peter Schweizer is the author of course, his book in the New York Post. That's what they're trying to prevent. A real investigation and an examination of the Bidens. Instead, they want you to believe the President of the United States is corrupt. Go ahead.
And determine the outcome. That is against the whole essence of what America's all about. The American people should determine who their president and senator and congressman are.
Really? And so that's why we're going through impeachment and a trial. The American people did determine who their president, senators, and congressmen are and were. They're trying to reverse it. They want you to believe that the President of the United States brought in Russia. Who was president when Russia interfered with our election? Obama. Who sought to interfere with the election? Who sought to interfere with the outcome of the election? The Obama administration, his FBI, his intelligence agencies, his party, the DNC and Hillary Clinton, colluding with the Russians for that phony dossier that they paid for. Seriously, folks, how sick is this? Go ahead.
Not a foreign power. And if that starts to happen, our democracy is in peril.
Yes, and it did start to happen. It has happened. We know that in the 1990s in Clinton's reelection, as I explained on Hannity on Thursday night last, and on my radio show multiple times, and in my book on freedom of the press, an entire section where I talk about how the Democrats used foreign governments to interfere in our election, and how Bill Clinton used millions of dollars from the Red Chinese military that was laundered through individuals in this country to the DNC, to the Clinton Defense Fund, to the Clinton campaign, and the campaign of other Democrats. Millions of dollars. Charlie Chang, John Wang, the Riyadi Group. Remember all that? And on and on and on. Bringing bags of money to the DNC. Collectively, hundreds of visits to the Clinton White House. There's no dispute. Really, the newspaper that took the lead on this, there really was only one, was the LA Times. So Clinton's reelected. How many independent counsel or special counsels were appointed to investigate that? 0. And it died right after his reelection. Nobody brings it up but me. CNN won't bring it up. Schumer won't bring it. Nobody brings it up but me. We've had a lot of interference in our elections. Oh, yes, we have. We had Ted Kennedy as a senator thinking about running again for president in '84, but definitely focused on defeating Reagan's second term. Backdoors through former Senator John Tunney, another liberal Democrat from California, communications with the KGB. This is serious, it's true. With the KGB to try and organize a strategy to defeat Reagan. How many hearings did they hold on that? In Congress, 0. Any ethics hearings? 0. Any special counsel? 0. How did the media take to that? They ignored it completely. There's 2 examples that I can think of off the top of my head. And what did Trump do? A phone call with the head of Ukraine. He didn't say interfere with the election. I want to defeat Biden, get me dirt on Biden and so forth. He said there's been some reports, which there have been. And why shouldn't we look into the Bidens? Why are they immune from their conduct? I just said, here's a New York Post piece, how 5 members of Joe Biden's family got rich through his connections. And you're not allowed to talk to foreign governments about it. Really? Well, Robert Mueller spoke to 13 foreign governments when he was interviewing investigating Donald Trump and others for Russia collusion. 13 governments. No complaint there. Go.
Democracy which has blessed this country for over 200 years. And second, can a president so stonewall that no information about serious charges comes out?
No information, ladies and gentlemen. First, we had the Mueller investigation, $40 million, hundreds of subpoenas, hundreds of witnesses, millions of pages of documents, not one assertion of any privilege by the president. Attorney-client privilege, executive privilege, no privileges, complete access, nothing, zero. Then they genuflect and they move to Ukraine. And what do? They try a different tack. What do they want? People in his inner circle that no president of the United States, going all the way back to Washington, would give up to Congress. Why? Separation of powers. A president must be able to get advice from his top advisors. He must be able to get advice from a White House counsel, from a National Security Council, from a chief of staff, from the head of OMB, without them reporting to the House or the Senate in a hostile environment to the opposition party, or a president can't function. So even the Supreme Court has accepted the idea that there has to be some level of executive privilege for the president to function. Imagine if we could get access to all of Schumer's top advisors, all their emails, all their texts, all their documents, put them under oath, under penalty of perjury, and get their testimony, because we want to know if Schumer should be expelled. And we want to know if he's been involved in bad activity. And we want to know about his finances, short of a criminal investigation. Imagine what we'd learn about him. You think he would object then to what he's trying to do to the President of the United States? Of course. So this is bogus. Those subpoenas were bogus. They were coming 1,000 a second, so to speak. They were intended to set up the President of the United States. The phony whistleblower with the phony complaint, coordinating with Schiff and his staff and the Democrats, I should say. An Obama holdover, close to Biden, close to Brennan. He was basically a CIA operative. Now they don't want to talk about him. We're not even allowed to utter his name. And yet he kicked the whole thing. But they want witnesses. Republicans couldn't call a single witness in the House Intelligence Committee. Now Schiff wants witnesses. Republicans couldn't call a single witness in the House Judiciary Committee. Now Nadler wants witnesses. They couldn't introduce independent evidence. Now they want evidence from a man who's been indicted from Ukraine. President of the United States couldn't call any witnesses. His counsel couldn't be present. They held initial interviews of their so-called would-be witnesses in a secret room in the basement of that. And now they talk about transparency. How much of this bull crap do we really have to put up with? Rather than the American flag, this jerk ought to have the hammer and sickle. I'm not kidding. They wave around the Constitution like they believe in it. Progressives don't believe in the Constitution. Read them. Herbert Crowley, Ray, Woodrow Wilson, on and on and on. Trash the founders. Trash the Constitution. Trash the Declaration of Independence. I wrote about it in Rediscovering Americanism and the Tyranny of Progressivism. He's a radical progressive. He doesn't believe in any of this stuff. Go ahead.
Again, that's totally against what the Founding Fathers stated. It was up to Congress to impeach. It was up to Congress to determine documents.
No, it wasn't up to Congress to impeach. The House could impeach under certain circumstances. The Article 1, Article 2, the Constitution of the United States doesn't say the House, it's up to the House to impeach. That the House has all power, illimitable power. The Constitution is a document of limited powers. And they, again, debate. I don't think this man has read any of this stuff. Or he's lying. Again, when you look at Madison's notes and you understand, it's not up to Congress to do whatever it wants. It has to live within the Constitution. That's why when you hear people say it's a political process, there's political motivation, but the process is constitutional. You need to follow the rules. Treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That is crimes, high crimes of the kind of treason and bribery. Treason, bribery. They don't even get mentioned in the Democrats' articles because there is no treason and bribery or other like high crimes or misdemeanors whatsoever. But he waves around the Constitution, which he spits on every day. Go ahead.
There is no executive privilege here. And in fact,
What do you
since
mean
the
there's no
president-
executive privilege here? See, this is the thing about him and Pelosi and people of their ilk. They're dictators. They have a fascistic mindset. I've concluded there's no executive privilege here. But the president is litigating this. No, too bad. Obstruction of Congress. You're not allowed to litigate it. We decide. Is that what your Constitution says? No. Go ahead.
has talked about everything that's happened. Any claim of executive privilege is gone.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Any claim of executive privilege is gone. And that argument is so absurd. What he's saying is, from a practicing lawyer point of view, attorney-client privilege, you start revealing things that you discussed with your client, well, then you may have waived the privilege, depending what you said and depending what you're asserting, right? That's number one. Number two, we're talking about the office of the presidency, protecting the office of the presidency. We're not even talking about attorney-client privilege. We're talking about executive privilege. So that overlays even attorney-client privilege. But that said, you can have a discussion with somebody like your NSA director and make that public without waiving every discussion you ever had with your NSA director. That's ridiculous. But that's his point. Go ahead.
The president's afraid of the truth. Most Americans, my guess is even Republicans, know what the truth is and know he's hiding it.
I don't know what he's talking about, do you? He released the phone transcript. They had one party, 100% control in the House of Representatives. Any witness they wanted, they called or could have called. So what are they talking about? Well, we wanted Bolton, but we didn't go to court because it would take too long. Well, that's your problem. And by the way, how do you know Bolton's going to give you what you want? Bolton may not give you what you want. By the way, you hear Bolton's name a lot less now. I think they're a little nervous that he could hurt them. But anyway, go ahead.
We Democrats aim to get the truth. And make no mistake about it. We will force votes on witnesses and documents. And it will be up to 4 Republicans to side with the Constitution, to side with our democracy, to side with rule of law, and not side in blind obeisance to President Trump and his desire to suppress the truth.
Blind obeisance? Obedience, isn't that what he means? Maybe obeisance is a word. Maybe he created it. I thought the word was blind obedience, but maybe I'm wrong. Go ahead.
Because in my judgment, he probably thinks he's guilty.
No. Now he's a psychoanalyst. He's more like a psycho. Anyway, that's the propaganda these people are putting out. Well, we're going to keep track of the trial, obviously, and I want to strongly encourage you to do something. I'm going to be discussing this impeachment trial with a background that very few people have, with knowledge accumulated over 40 years, with scholarship, that is, I've studied this my entire life. You're not going to see it on television, and you're not going to hear it on most radio shows. So I want to strongly encourage you, if not now, when, to contact friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, and have them sign up for LevinTV through Blaze TV. 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV. I want to strongly encourage you, for the days that I'm here doing LevinTV, to participate in this and to spread the word, because once again, you're not going to hear it from defense counsel, former federal prosecutors, liberal legal analysts, these newsrooms and their partisanship and so forth. I will give you the information I know as best as I can. I bet you I'm the only person broadcasting, whether it's digital TV, network TV, cable TV, whether it's podcasting, terrestrial radio, who has read the transcript of Andrew Johnson's impeachment, who's read the transcript of Andrew Johnson's impeachment, which I read and my fellow lawyers at Landmark Legal Foundation read years ago during the Clinton impeachment, and the other available scholarship that's out there. I guarantee none of them bring that to the table. You know what they bring to the table? Hype, yelling, politics, surmise. So stick with us. We want to have as big of audience as we can, especially now. that we have this outrageous Senate trial leading up to the election of 2020. That's it.